So welcome to Feature Fridays. My name is Guy Bartram. I'm Product Marketing Director for the Cloud Director suite of products. And today I'm joined by Jörg Lou. Jörg, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, hi, I'm Jörg. I'm a technical product manager at VMware's Cloud Provider Business Unit.
Excellent. Thank you, Jörg. And today we're going to talk about Cloud Director and the ability to brand Cloud Director and skin Cloud Director, make it look and feel like your company's product and your company's brand. So this, when was this first introduced, this capability, Jörg? Because it's something quite new, isn't it?
Yeah, so some customization has been there even in the earlier versions where you could add some custom links, but the branding itself and the capabilities to change colors came in well with the new HTML5 UI. I think in mainly Cloud Director 9.7 is
Yes.
where we
So
had the main functionality. In earlier versions, you still could change some links or add some additional links into the help menu, for example. But all the logos, login page, and colors is 9.7 and later.
So what is the scope for the the customization that you have here? I mean, logos,
Mhm,
obviously, colors,
mhm.
fonts, all of these things possible?
Yeah, so it's very powerful. I mean, you can start rather simple with basic colors and logos in the title bar, but we do have a theme generator that allows you to access pretty much yeah, all the different style sheet information for all the different objects. So you well, can go pretty crazy when it comes to theming. Of course, that means more and more effort to test that all the different screens still look useful. But we can see, or we will see hopefully in the demo, that you, even with some simple customization and simple branding, you can achieve a lot of yeah, differentiation and value add for your tenants.
And tell me, how does this work in terms of, if I upgrade my version of Cloud Director, do I have to, go through this effort every time, or is this something that holds true across all version
Mhm.
upgrades?
Yeah, so the simple customizations like adding a logo or adding additional links into the menus, they typically stay very stable because it's very simple changes that you do in the UI. If you do some more complex stuff like really changing the style sheet information and create some custom themes that you upload to Cloud Director, that means some more testing and likely some adjustments because well, with each Cloud Director update, we get newer versions of the Clarity design framework that's used for the HTML5 UI. And well, we have a lot of more new screens and new just new structure, navigation structure that might change, new functionality that gets added, obviously, to Cloud Director means new, I don't know, pop-up wizards, things like that. And that means a lot of more selectors and a lot of more things that you might have to customize.
So you might find that what was 100% customized before, suddenly you're
Yeah.
down to 80% with some new screens and
Mhm.
additional customization.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, that
I
makes
mean, the Clarity framework helps a lot with that to simplify sort of if you have a table, it's always the same table that's being used for the different screens, but there's still well, updates with Clarity that you have to check, and if the selector labels have changed, things like that need some effort. But for even with that said, that only well, applies if you really go into details of customizing even the yeah, deep down individual radio button or accept button to your style. If you just follow, let's say, some rather global background colors, menu item colors, font colors, things like that, that absolutely yeah should stay stable even with updates.
okay. All right, that's good to know. So let's have a little browse then. What are we
Mhm,
looking at now from a kind of demo perspective in terms?
mhm. Okay, yeah, the idea is I want to first give an overview about the tenant portal and the provider portal to show which settings can be adjusted and customized, and then we will see how you do that as a provider. That might go a bit, yeah, or will go a bit into the technical details because these branding things are available through the API. However, the API calls are pretty straightforward and well documented. I will show in the documentation how to do this. And then, well, we will see results, some branded portals with custom logos, things like that, so that you get an impression about how the look and feel of Cloud Director changes when you use the the branding capabilities that we have.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah, with that, let's get started. Let me share my screen to the demo environment, where we now see, well, the regular provider portal. So I'm logged in as a provider system administrator and can see the provider portal of Cloud Director. I do have another browser window open where I'm logged into a tenant. So I'm going to log in as a tenant admin for my T1 tenant here and open up the tenant portal just to see how the different things that we change reflect in the tenant portal.
Okay, got it.
Yeah, so things that you can customize from, let's say, simple to complex is you can mainly the top menu bar that you can see here, that impression you can change to adjust the logo, for example, and the label of the Cloud Director sort of brand here. And you can adjust links, either the links that are here in the help menu, so you can change these links that come out of the box and typically go to the VMware documentation or just through the about screen. And for this sort of user drop-down field here, you can customize that pretty much and add your own links if you want to into that menu, so that you can link to either other services that you might want to offer, to some I don't know, user guide, some additional service offerings, some ticket system, whatever, openness support request, things like that. So these links can be quite easily adjusted here. If you want to go a bit more into the details, we will see that in the demo as well. You can also adjust the color of that main bar rather easily with simple API calls. If you want to go into fully blown customization, that means that you can create some custom themes in Cloud Director, and with that you get access to pretty much every different component that you can see in the portal, and you can adjust that, including, and that's the interesting part, because it's the first thing that you can see as a user, including the login screen.
I was going to say the login screen is an important one. Yeah.
Okay. Let's have a look at our environment, and then we can start branding, make some changes from simple to more complex, and see the results.
Okay.
So I'm going back to just a provider portal to give an overview of what we have. So in my provider portal, I do have a bunch of tenants configured, and as you can see here, these animals, well, I'm a zoo provider, so hosting clouds for different kinds of animals and their organizations and their VDCs. And as for this, I want to, as a provider, first of all, want to customize my Cloud Director installation so that it looks a bit more with my corporate design as a zoo. And with that, first I want to change the logo and just a view for the main bar here. Now, to do that, you have to use the REST API that Cloud Director offers. That's a provider-facing API, so you need to be a provider to do these customizations, obviously. To get the details of the API calls, I'm using the Postman REST client just for convenience to make these REST calls when I'm doing the demo, but if you want to reproduce that, you can either use Postman as well, or see the documentation. If you just open up your Cloud Director URL and then go to /docs, to this URL, you can see a description of all the different API methods of the Cloud API, and there's some branding section here where you can see the different calls that are used for the branding and theming thing.
Just a quick question before we go into it. So if I'm a service provider with direct tenants, direct customers, then this is making sense. If I'm a provider whose tenant is a service provider, is it possible then to rebrand their specific tenant login and their look and feel different to mine?
Yeah, so that is a very important addition that we added, I think, in 9.7 or 10.0. that you can adjust the look and feel and all the things, logos, branding, even the whole theming on a per tenant base. So that means, and we will see that in the demo, you really can change the look and feel of the Cloud Director portal for each tenant if you want to. The only limitation is right now that you have to do this as a service provider level. So it's not, if you have this multiple layers, it's not that the tenant can change their branding just for their organization. You as a provider have to do that for them.
Right.
That's just a permission system as it is right now.
Yeah, sure. Okay.
But we will see you can do a custom branding really on a per tenant base, which is a very, very powerful thing. We will come back to that when we see it how how it impacts the look and feel of Cloud Director. Yeah, so that's the API documentation. Another way to really get the Swagger documentation where you can give it a try is in the provider portal. In this help menu, just click that API Explorer button, and then you get to the Swagger-based documentation, which is a bit, just different style for these individual calls, and you can even give them a try. So it's the regular API documentation way, where you get the details about the individual calls, their responses, and so on. So that's very helpful for you just to have a look at all the different API calls that are possible when it comes to branding and theming. With that, let's start with some API calls where we want to change the look and feel. First of all, the simple scenario that we as a provider want to, let's say, globally change the look and feel for the Cloud Director portal based on our branding, provider branding, rather than having the VMware logo and the VMware Cloud Director label in here. So with that, I'm switching over to Postman, where I just have stored and prepared these API calls. So the first thing that you have to do whenever you work with the Cloud Director API is to authenticate. So the first call with basic authentication for Cloud Director. Important to note, I'm logging in as a system administrator to the system org here. And that when I run that request, it will authenticate and give me back an authentication token in the header. And this access token, that's a big thing of Postman. You can store that in a variable, so that you don't have to provide this manually, but this token then will be sent for each subsequent request to Cloud Director. That's just Cloud Director API behavior.
Yeah, okay.
And first of all, let's see for the different things that we have. So the first thing I'm going to do is just making a simple get API call to the branding system where we can see the headers where I get, according to the documentation, API version, what I expect. And for the authorization, I have that bureau token with the token that I got. That's a Postman setting if you want to reproduce this. So I'm going to send it here. And then I get back just the very default information. I have my portal name, which is this one, VMware Cloud Director. That's what we can see in Cloud Director in the title bar. There's no special color, so it just uses the default sort of clarity theme color. And there are no special custom links in here. So that means these links for the help and about page and for the menu are just the out-of-the-box links.
Yeah.
So the next call I want to make is to change that. So first of all, I want to make a put request for the logo to define a logo for my suite branding. So I've selected a logo PNG file and get that as a binary with a put request.
Some sort of size specification with them as well, right?
It makes sense to make the file size as small as possible not to impact the performance. But if it's, and I think it has to be a PNG file, but Cloud Director automatically scales it that it fits into this thing.
Okay.
So I made that call, got a no content back because that's just how it is. And now let's reload the page. When you try that, by the way, it's always a good idea to use different browsers, clear browser cache early and often when you reload, because a lot of these things the browser actually caches So you have to make sure between your calls use new incognito windows, things like that, to make sure that it's really the latest version that Cloud Director pulls.
Got it. Yeah.
And yeah, now we can see here we have our SU logo, and this logo is, well, it's a public branding. So if I am going to log into my tenant one, you can see, first of all, it already shows up in here. I will talk about this in a second, but you can see if I'm logging in as a tenant admin, we see the same logo already in the on the main page. So that's now global setting where I, as a service provider, add my branding, my corporate design to the portal. One thing to note, which is mentioned in the documentation, per default, in the default settings of Cloud Director, Cloud Director does not change the login screen, because that might allow, well, a tenant to, since at this page, the tenant user is not authenticated yet, and that might sort of spill some information about other tenants, which we don't want per default in Cloud Director. So the default setting is the more secure setting, really, to use the default screen, because at this page you're not authenticated yet as a user. But you can change that using the cell management tool, and that is one setting which is defined. I think I just run that and passed. Yeah. So on the Cloud Director cell, you can see there is a cell management tool, and then this backend branding require authentication false if you set this setting, which is configured in the branding section of the Cloud Director documentation. That means Cloud Director will do some branding even for the login page. That's just a hint if you want to try that. Be aware that, well, depending if you do a per tenant branding here, that one tenant might see branding information from another tenant if they sort of guess the tenant URL and the tenant name, because at this page, at this stage, there is no authentication yet, so the user is not identified yet.
Sure. Yeah, that makes sense.
Just for you, but that's sort of, if you give that a try, just to make sure not to forget about that setting, because otherwise you, yeah, might do some meaningless troubleshooting.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, some other things that we might change in another API call when we do the. So we put the logo for the global setting here, and we can do the branding. If I find the right call. Here we go. Put my SU branding. So this call is now again with the put call to the global branding. So it's global for everybody. And what I want to change here, just in the context here, is to change the portal name to SU Cloud, change the color to some more greeny style for my animals. Still using the default theme, so the rest stays pretty much in the same clarity theme. And I want to add some additional links to the menus, which we can see in a second. So I'm going to overwrite one link, one existing link, the about link, and I'm adding one other link for a map, just with external links to show that it's possible. Okay. I'm going to send this request and should get back 200 OK with the details. And now let's switch over here again. I'm directly using the tenant one login, just reloading the page again to make sure that we get the latest information. And you can see already the changed color.
Yep.
Then when I'm logging in, we should see.
So if you updated the style sheet for this, you could move the login screen into the center and do all sorts.
Yeah, that's something we will see later, because that's a bit more complex. Right now, I just made these individual API calls for these, let's say, basing branding, where you change existing things. We can see the different color of the navigation bar here.
Yeah.
But remember or note that the colors of the menu and the text is still the same, so you are sort of a bit limited of the choice of color to make it still readable, because it's really just the color of the navigation bar here that changes.
Yeah.
If we go into, I don't know, some view here, you can see all the rest is still the same clarity default style. So it should fit together, obviously. The other thing we've seen on the About page, that's the link that typically just has that pop-up about the Cloud Director. When I open this now, it goes to my Wikipedia page, the link that I added. And in this menu, we can have, or we see there is one new section and a new link here just to a map where I do, I don't know, support requests, something like that. Which then, if I open this up, shows that other link. I don't know, with all the different data centers I have as a SU. But you get the idea that you can add your custom links in here. And again, you can go, there are some different sections here, so you can add these ruler lines here for separating, and you can add, well, more or less as many links as you want to. But again, it has to be usable, so limit the navigation to, I don't know, 10 items, whatever.
Could those links, just out of interest, if you wanted to, like you said, raise a support ticket, could it then call a workflow to drive some extensibility framework stuff?
That is not directly possible, at least not with this functionality.
Right.
If you want to do that, you would have to create your own UI plugin that then shows up here in the More page.
Okay.
That's topic for a different feature Friday.
Yeah. We'll cover that.
What you can do, however, if you look at the documentation in these links, I think when you create the links, since at this stage the user is authenticated, that means Cloud Director knows about the organization, the user ID, and the organization ID of the user, and this information can be used into in the link as some placeholder, so that you could create, I don't know, a link with a mail to, or a link that has some specific part with the user information in there.
Yeah.
If you want to do it a bit more customized.
Yeah. Okay, that makes sense.
Okay. Now this, what we've seen here is now the sort of the global branding. Again, the scenario, I as a provider want to do my provider custom corporate design and brand Cloud Director globally for all the tenants with that design. Now to go a bit more into the details for the flexible one, you can see here, I didn't refresh, so it's still the old version, but the next demo I want to do, I want to change the logo just for the elephants here, to do some basic adjustment just for this organization, for this tenant. And with that, it's another put request to get the logo. And you can see here in the URL, now it's again in the branding section, but then under the tenant, you have the link or the part of the tenant in the URL now. So that means you could change, I'm here for the elephant, any other organization name you can add in here, and then change the branding just for this individual tenant with the information. And it's a simple logo call, so I can do just my elephant logo in here. I'm going to send this.
But at the login page in this scenario, then you're still going to have the default login page, but then you're going to have the logo when you're logged in. Yeah.
We will see that in a second. So let me log out here. And I'm going to log in, but not with tenant T1, but with my elephant tenant.
There you go. Yeah.
And you can see we have the changed logo, but still the rest is sort of the default or our global branding here.
Yeah. But you could change all the rest of that branding as long as you use the elephant login URL.
Yeah, exactly. So with that, you have, again, the same API call available. I just did the logo for demos, but you could do the same API call we did before. where we had the global branding with all these details in the JSON file, this one. So these details you can quite easily do with the branding, and then just not for the global branding, but something like your tenant and then the tenant here. So you can change, let's say, the basic colors, even the portal name very easily with a single API call, and create some links on a per tenant base, which might also be useful for different information or for different scenarios. Like you have, I don't know, different tenants with gold level support, or some tenants that you use as a part of a managed service offering, where you add more information and more additional links into these menus rather to the basic VM hosting public cloud infrastructure as a service tenant.
Yep.
As an example. Okay. Yeah, so this is the simple scenario to create a per tenant branding, where you do logo, portal name creation, and color on a per tenant base, which, well, looks pretty simple. But as you can see, well, just the logo and the design here already changes a lot the perception of the tenant, how they consume the Cloud Director resource.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you want to go deeper, the steps are a bit more complex. The idea is that you create a so-called custom theme. So there are some API calls available. When we look at the section here for the themes, where you create a custom theme, and for that custom theme, you define a name just to identify that. And then for that theme, you have to upload a CSS file, so the style sheet file, with where you can access the whole, all the different components of the cloud portal and change colors and appearance there, with all the power of the CSS settings, so these style sheet settings. And then once you created the theme, then you can again do the put request, as we've seen before, where you do either on a per tenant base or globally. Again, you can do that on a per tenant base or globally, where you do that branding with the organization. And in this call, you then select, we've seen the portal name and the color, that's sort of the basic thing. You can change that, but if you create a custom theme, then you specify your theme here, and then switch the theme either globally, again, for the whole installation and all tenants, or on a per tenant base. Now, for these themes, the thing is that in Clarity, you obviously, or put it this way, in the Cloud Director UI, you obviously have a lot of different things here: navigation bar, drop downs, you have different sub-navigation bar, you have table views, you have these tile views for individual virtual machines, things like that. So a lot of different components, and it's pretty hard, or it would be pretty hard to figure out from scratch where to start building this CSS style sheet. Now, for that, we do have a theme generator that's part of the SDK. So with that, and that's now one version specific thing, since for 10.1 we had some update in the Clarity version, which were breaking the old theme generator. So the theme generator, the idea and the behavior is the same. Even for older versions, it's just a different place where you find that. So the latest one for 10.1 is in the VMware samples, VCDX samples repository on GitHub, where we have a whole bunch of examples that you can use for when working with Cloud Director APIs. So there's also a UI plugin toolkit in there, for example, for further integrations. But if you select that repository, and then there is some, you can see there are different examples in here. And then there's that 10.1 theme generator, which allows you to create themes just for 10.1. If you want to do that for older versions, the theming support, I think, came in with 9.7, Cloud Director 9.7. And these older versions you can find directly in the VCD extension VCDX SDK repository. So it's a different place, but the sort of the behavior and the usage of that theme generator is the same.
Okay.
Now, the good thing, it comes with a pretty good README file. So if you go through that, requirements that you need the Node Package Manager, NPM, installed on your system. So that's sort of the usual tool that you have as a web designer. And since we are going into, well, pretty much web design here with the cascading style sheets and things like that, that's sort of a requirement must have, and you should know about that, but it's pretty easy to use. So you need Node. You clone the repository, and then you can run these Node build to just create a basic CSS file. And this sort of CSS file then can be used in your theme and upload to Cloud Director with different steps. The idea is when you download the repository or clone that repository, you have 3 files available in the source section where you can access the different information. And just as an example in here, where we can see, let me just see that here in the repository, because that's the best view. So we can see here, there are some examples for a basic theme, for a dark theme, for clarity, where you have this sort of rather black background and bright color on top of that, rather than bright gray background. But in the base thing, we can see some things here. The styles you typically don't have to change, but you can see we have the selectors where you could add your own CSS definitions for certain things. We'll see in a second. And we have these variables. Now these are things that are used in the Clarity design functionality, or the design sort of framework, where you can access directly certain just values for the appearance. So we can see here, these are color definitions, for example, for headers, for certain menus and things like that. And then you have the CSS typical way to define the color, either in RGB values or some other values. So that's common sort of CSS knowledge that you need here to edit this. And once you've changed and made your adjustments here, then you run this npm build command that we've seen in the documentation. Back here. And this build command just sort of spits out one CSS file in the target folder, and that CSS file then you upload to Cloud Director. Now, for that, I don't want to go through the whole procedure. That would be a bit too much into the details, but I want to show you some examples how it looks like when you finish all these things. So I have created one CSS file for my other tenant in Cloud Director. So we can see I have here one penguins tenant for the penguins, and I want to, for them, I want to really change the whole behavior, including the login screen. So I did create some certain definition based on, again, the documentation that we've seen here. We get some examples for the login screen definition. And I created that CSS file, and then just to show you what I did to come to the result. So there was one request to create a new theme, which is a pretty easy one. Just define the new name for that theme, one API call that I did. The next one, that then for that created theme, I had to post the CSS file. So it's a post request with the CSS file where you just have the file name and the exact size for that. And when you run that as the response, you get a link for the actual upload, because these CSS files, they are treated by Cloud Director as binary files, pretty much in the same way as the logo image files. And therefore, the transfer service is used just to make sure that it's not an open API that anybody could use to upload anything. So it's really, you have to follow this process to define the upload, and then you get one link, and this link you then can use with the put, where you do you can see this, that's a sort of a unique UUID just for this request that got created. And then I can upload the, as a raw or a binary file, I can upload my CSS file.
Okay, very cool.
And yeah, and once that is done, then I can do my put again for the branding where I had, not sure if that's still in there. Yeah, we have the branding for my tenant penguins in here. And now you can see here, I changed the portal name and I selected as a theme, the custom theme with the name that I created in this first create theme API call.
Got it. So you've got to upload the CSS first, and that's a two-stage with some security built in, like you said. And then once you've uploaded it, you then just reference it in the type theme name.
Which also means, well, these theme definitions are sort of independent from the actual tenants. So you can have one theme again for your gold level customers with some, I don't know, gold background, something like that, which you then assign to multiple tenants and reuse that. Okay, yeah, in my case, I've done that for the penguins. So let me.
Let's have a look at the penguins.
Yeah. Log out here. And then log in again. And now you can see that's even the changed login page. I have put another background file in here for the logo. This background file, by the way, is stored externally on some external link. So it just is a URL background definition to an external image. I've uploaded a custom logo for the penguins. That's using the same calls that we did before. We got the penguin cloud in here. And if I log in here, then I think I changed some colors. Let's see. Ah, yeah, okay. In this case, the theme is still the regular theme, but we can see if we go in here, you can see that we have this sort of black and white penguin theme. You get the idea. So with this, you can.
Loaded in.
Sorry?
Is that the dark theme that's been loaded on?
Yeah, that's the default that comes with these sort of the theme generator, but you can use this and change pretty much all the different colors that you want to in all the different pages. So really create some branding for that specific customer or for that specific tenant if you want to.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of deep branding exercise, and there'll be quite a lot to test on every upgrade, every release on that. It might be, I guess there's going to be levels that people want to brand too. But I could think the login page, and then also the top bar, like you said.
These are the most important ones, and then perhaps some basic colors like the background for the different navigation bars and the main window already gets a long way if you change these. And these are pretty much stable because they are always the same, even if in new Cloud Director version we add some more functionality here and add some more menu entries. It's still on the same sort of background, and the main page also will use the same style sheet definitions for the backgrounds.
Yeah, sure. Okay, that makes a lot of sense. So, I mean, I guess, when we looked at, say, for example, 10.1 brought in the horizontal menu rather than the hamburger that used to be at top. So if you just had the background color, you'd probably been okay with that.
Yeah. And I mean, the thing, if it doesn't find a theme, it just always falls back to the clarity default.
Yeah.
Which, if you stay sort of in the same color scheme with light and dark, typically it's still usable, but it might not look that nice anymore.
Yeah, a little bit of testing and playing around, and see you can get away with your branding limits versus what is out of the box is probably necessary.
And obviously you need at least some level of web developer skills to know about, well, CSS style sheet definitions, how to select them, perhaps some experience with the Clarity framework that helps you to easily identify the things. But even with some very basic CSS skills, you can get a long way defining different colors and mainly, well, adjusting the login screen, because that's your front door for the cloud offering.
Like you showed, right? The examples are
Yeah.
out. It's
Hmm.
easy to define a login screen
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
logo and update your
Yeah.
company name. Yeah, and I also think the URLs, like you said, the drop down on the um,
Hmm.
help part is also going to be something that people want to customize quite
Hmm.
easily. Yeah.
Yeah. And all these things, as I mentioned, can be done. Well, login page, you need a custom theme. For the other ones, the help and the logo and the main color, just for the top bar, that can be done just with individual API calls.
Yeah, sure.
If you want to do that, just as a FYI, there is one GitHub repository that has some called VCD H5 themes from one of our partner
Hmm.
managers administrator who built some wrapper for PowerShell for these. So you get PowerShell commandlets to set branding, set logos, things like that, very
That's
easily. So these
yeah,
easy API calls.
excellent. And of course, if anyone wants the penguins theme, then please make checks payable to your glue. Great, York. I think that's
Okay.
fantastic. Thank you so much for showing us around. Is there anything else to focus in on before we wrap up?
No, just again, to repeat as usual, start simple, um, make a list what you want to achieve. Again, whenever it comes to these branding and customization efforts, always set usability first. The nicest colors don't help if people cannot find or cannot read any things anymore, any items anymore. Start simple and start with the one that get you the most values, like really the colors, the logo, and the login screen. And then eventually you can dig deeper and look into more detailed colors and branding if you want to.
Yeah, I mean that's sound advice. I mean, keep it simple, keep it straight and easy to manage. Depending on your experience and your level of knowledge, then test and retest,
Yeah.
and you're happy because obviously
Mm.
things do change, but stick with the kind of the basics and you should be good. Great. Well, listen, thank you very much,
Mm.
Jorg, again for showing us around there and showing us all the API calls. It's been really good. I've learned a lot, so thank you very
Sure.
much.
See you next time. Bye.